What's up, everybody? This is Alex Christopher with the Duran, and I have with me Peter Lavelle, host of RT's Crosstalk. And today we're going to be taking a look at the Civil War brewing in the United States of America. All right, Peter, Civil War. I don't know if that's over dramatic, if I'm dramatizing it, or if it's actually the right words to use as to the schism that we see in the United States. I would say it's a definite divide between establishment, neoliberal, neoconservatives. Maybe you take the two coasts, West and East Coast, against what we all call now the deplorables, the working men and women of middle America. And there is a big divide on a lot of different topics and themes, social, political, economic. What do you think about calling this an impending civil war?
Well, I think it's obviously, given all the little elements that you just mentioned right there, there's certainly a cultural civil war going on in the United States. That's undeniable. And it's getting far and far worse. It's getting more and more intense. A cultural war could easily lead to something more into the political realm. I think there's no problem with that. And we use the obvious example of Donald Trump. I mean, particularly on the left, they're willing to trash the rule of law. I mean, this is, what's happening is that the American civic religion envisioned by the founders is coming apart. That's what is really significant here. We have two fundamentally opposed juxtapositions, narratives about what the country is all about. And why people use the term civil war is because they're irreconcilable. One isn't going to morph into the other, or the two aren't going to meet somewhere in the middle. Okay, that is the problem here, and it's a lot more. It's a lot worse than I think a lot of people are willing to admit, because most people get their information from liberal media. Look at me as a person, my personal journey, odyssey through life. I'm a product, educationally speaking, of the University of California, and yeah, I was indoctrinated. And then I became one of the indoctrinators, okay? I went from a grad student to lecturer. And everybody was told to listen to NPR, okay, to get your news. We all told the students that. And I did it too. And it took me living outside of that environment for years to detox myself from this ideology. See, one of the reasons Trump is the end result, okay? Trump is a manifestation of what's been brewing for decades. Look who runs media, look who runs entertainment, Hollywood, and academia. They're all the prodigies of the 60s and 70s. They're the people in power right now. I read Foucault in Derrida and Horkheimer. Okay, these are all the Frankfurt School, cultural Marxists. And I take great pleasure in talking about them, not because I agree with them, is that most people are not even aware that they're influenced by these ideas. And then when I argue with the left, they know the names, probably read a couple of book reviews, but they don't delve into the literature. I did. Actually, I know quite a bit about Marxism. And I think I've said in our podcast before, I'm actually kind of an admirer of Marx in many ways because of his understanding of capitalism. It's the post-Marxists I have the biggest problem with, because they abandoned economics and hijacked culture. So this, when you have elites, because it's elites against everyone else, so we can stay away from the parties here. You have globalism, multiculturalism, and the left's commitment to political correctness. Now, this is a meta-language that is more and more alien to the deplorables. It's not because we're dumb. It's just that it doesn't have any weight in reality. Okay, these are sloganeering. It is, instead of thinking, it's virtue signaling, and this is what the left thrives on. What's the last time? When's the last time you heard the left engage in an argument, in a debate? No. Well, obviously, Alex Christoforou, looking at you right now, you're white. Okay, I mean, you're part of the patriarchy. You're part of the problem. I mean, even when I was in graduate school, and that was kind of a long time ago, there was that group that I was saying, why are we always teaching our students the ideas of great white dead Europeans? And I just said, well, how about give me some people that thought these ideas in other cultures, and maybe we could look at them. Sure, all right. But there's the canon. See, this is. What is education for? And I would say to some degree entertainment as well. I mean, obviously entertainment is to make money. I get it, all right? But what education does is it is a transmitter of a agreed to cultural experience that binds a culture together, all right? And it's always the things that we think good of ourselves. That's primarily it. But we also have experiences that a tragedy that brought us together after death and destruction. Slavery in America is a very good example, all right? Overcoming Jim Crow in the South. At the end of the day, it brought us together. But not thinking at the same time that some of the remedies, quote-unquote remedies to those dark periods in our history would be actually counterproductive. We can make a separate video on how the Great Society to the present, under Johnson to the present, was amazingly damaging to the black family. The state has not helped. It's actually hindered. Right. If you look at, for example, fatherless homes, when this all remedies started, it was like 70% of fathers in the black family. Today, it's like it's less than a quarter. Okay, yeah. And it's just and the state did this, and it's ideology.
How would you categorize? Because we went a little bit in depth as to the establishment, and we know who they are. These people that are sitting in the penthouses in New York and the big Beverly Hills mansions, the Hollywood actors and the Robert De Niro's and all these people. How would you categorize, though, the other side? Are the deplorables, are they solely people that are connected to Trump?
No,
or is this a much bigger group of people on the other side of the fence?
Look, this phenomenon that has just kind of burst onto the scene. It's been around for a long time. I mean, I don't want to sound wonkish or anything like that, but you had in the American South, when the end of Jim Crow was coming about, you remember that there was this movement. We used to call them Dixiecrats, the Southern Democrats. Okay, and George Wallace, a very controversial American politician, very controversial. The more I would say this, at the risk of getting in trouble with a lot of people, the more you learn about him, the more you understand him, but not necessarily agree with him. Okay, but you understand him better. And he warned, is that the hinterland of the country, outside of the coast, they are in their bones conservatives. He would say Republican, but conservative. And so what a Trump supporter, kind of a prototype, is that they would say there's nothing wrong with our traditions, okay? And our traditions bind us together, and we're proud of our heritage. For example, in the red states, having military service in your family is something to be proud of, okay? You know, my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, they were all in the military. Religion is very important to these people, which, of course, the liberals just scour. You know, these ignorant people. But again, religion is what brings them together. Okay, and you see, the things that the people, the deplorables, they're looking for inclusivity. They're trying to find connections. And it's the liberals who are saying, well, you can't use that, can't use that, can't use that. And what they do is they want to isolate you because you're just another victim group, though your victimization is not very high in the pecking order. Okay, as a matter of fact, you're part of the problem. Okay, and of course, the plurals say, no, I didn't do this. We've never been in the elites wanting more state power and forcing ideology on our children. I mean, I'm young enough. I'm old enough. I'm young enough to remember when the primary motives in K through 12 was reading, writing, and arithmetic. It was kind of simple stuff.
Kind of necessary stuff.
Yeah, but it really was that. Okay, and now it is it's really a process of being sensitive, sensitizing people to politics. That's not what education is supposed to do. As a matter of fact, most of these young people now, they can't really do anything except for know how to be angry, outraged, and insulted. We train them to do that. That's what they're trained to do. So it's not surprising you see Antifa, okay? They're putting their education to work, okay?
Being an activist is now an actual profession. You know, what are you? I'm an activist.
I would even go further and say that's exactly what the liberal university system is training them to do. That's their purpose. Okay?
How much blame do you lay on the feet of universities for this?
Considerable. Look, you know, right now UC Davis is a hotbed of Antifaism or whatever, Antifaites. I went there for many, many years, and a lot of people sent their kids there because it was a quiet school. There was not a lot of distractions. You know, like at Berkeley when I was there was so many things to do because the city's there. But Davis is like a little town by itself. It's a university town. And so it was a really studious place, hardworking, very ambitious, and it was in the graduate course, not undergraduate, but graduate courses. Then, this postmodernism had made a big splash because people were really impressed with it. With the undergraduates, then it wasn't so bad, okay? Because I used to teach modern European history, and the professor that I was working for, I had some newfangled ideas, and he said, "No, Peter, just make sure they know who Woodrow Wilson was, Churchill, de Gaulle, Hitler, Stalin, Truman, Roosevelt. Just make sure they know who they are, and you know." The challenge to democracy and the rise of the liberal world order. If you can get that, and they know what all those words are and can talk about it, you've succeeded. Okay, but no, in graduate, I remember a graduate classes, graduate classes, and I can remember one of my colleagues. She taught the same course I did on one semester, and I sat in on it, and I just thought the entire course was Western civilization through anti-Semitism. And I remember telling, and I won't mention her name, I said, but don't you think, to her privately, I said, but don't you think Martin Luther's kind of important too, and John Calvin? No, we have to learn about the oppressed people. I said, but what about the majority experience? The majority experience was they were oppressed too, okay? So, you know, even then, and this is like 25 years ago. Can you imagine how worse it's gotten since then?
Yeah, a lot worse. A lot. I mean, I can't even begin to imagine what I thought 5-10 years ago, that America would end up being like this, the way I see it.
But the problem is that, and this applies to both sides of the divide, is that we go back to the beginning of our chat, cultural civil war. See, neither side sees the other one legitimate. And that's where you have the crisis, okay? Because right now, if you give an inch, the other side's going to demand not just a mile, surrender, okay?
So what are those sparks that could flip this from being just purely cultural to actually being something more serious? I don't want to, maybe more violent, who knows? I mean, maybe something legislative. You know, there's just more censorship, there's more isolation.
Yeah, I mean,
what are these sparks?
The sparks could be the attempt to impeach Donald Trump, where there is a perception that it is illegitimate. I mean, you and I have been following this Russia thing from the very beginning, and in my mind, the investigation is completely illegitimate. I mean, the more they look into Trump's collusion with Russia, the more they found out just about everybody else did, except for the Trump team. Okay, and I'm not carrying water for Donald Trump. I think what is happening, George Papadopoulos made his first public appearances here. I mean, look, you saw him. What is he, like 29, 28, 29, something like that?
Yeah.
Got a good looking wife. Good going, George.
Everyone thinks she's Russian, but she's actually Italian.
I thought she was like Slovenian. But anyway, his life has been ruined. Okay, I mean, based on what facts? Okay, so I think the spark could be if there is a push by the elites to essentially overturn the democratic will of the American people. That can be a major spark, okay? And that's going to get people motivated. The Republicans, since the election of Donald Trump, have been in disarray. I mean, really disarray. Paul Ryan, is he even a Republican? Why didn't he? I mean, why shouldn't he? Just should go home, okay? Just go home.
I agree.
I mean, there's got to be a backstory to that. I mean, what happened to that guy? It's amazing.
He just checked out. I mean, he just checked out.
We abrogated responsibility, okay, and this is what happens here. I guess he's going to get a 7-figure job now, okay. That's the kind of commitment people have. But it could come from if God forbid, a major war in Syria or with Iran, his base, they can be easily manipulated in foreign policy because the entire across the board. But there's a lot of people that say, look, my father, my grandfather, my we all gave blood. Okay, why are we doing it now? And we voted for a guy that said he wouldn't do that. That could get people motivated. But the military-industrial media complex, they're very clever, supporting of Israel, anti-Russia, anti-Iran. But that could trigger a debate.
How would the war? That's really interesting. How would a war divide up these? I mean, I see these two camps, and then I see a war coming in the middle. And I see a lot of the establishment, the neoliberals, the neocons. Of course, they're cheering, they're pushing for the war. But then you see on the deplorable sides, there are a lot of people. Say someone like Hannity, say he's on the Trump side of things, who would also probably be for a war. I could see him, pushing for the war and cheering it on.
No, he just does that.
Yeah, but then you have a whole nother group on both sides where you have libertarians, you have progressives, and then you also have conservatives who, like you said, voted, we don't want any more intervention, non-interventionists. So do you see a war? Could a war just toss everything, in disarray?
Well, it could, and I'll tell you how it could affect the deplorables. There was some very interesting articles over the last few weeks about the U.S. military preparedness. They're having to have to lower their standards to get more recruits. And a lot of the young men, primarily, eligible to go into the military, they're overweight, they're not smart enough. They're socially dysfunctional because of social media. I mean, the military is having a hard time recruiting new people. A war against Iran, the only way the U.S. quote unquote could win is a land war.
Right.
That's a big country, and a country that is quite unified, unlike the mainstream media just talks about propaganda. Sure, there are domestic issues. In Russia, there was a huge discussion about pension reform, okay? It didn't mean the government was teetering from power, okay? Iran has a lot of problems, too. But, that's going to, selling the American people and the people do you think the people on the coast send their kids to war? No, of course not, okay? They don't have to go to war. And it's one of the reasons why they got rid of the conscription is because it's essentially poor people that go into the military, and poor people have no political power. Isn't it really a perfect circle for the elites? Okay, cannon fodder.
Yeah, but they push the wars. I mean, the Hillary Clinton
clan. They're not going to fight him. They're not going to fight him. For sure. I mean, if they did want to go to war, then I think every member of Congress should send their children to war too. I mean, that would be fair, wouldn't it? All right. So this divide, it's only going to get worse. I don't see how it's going to be mended. I just don't, because it's what was it? I think you and I commented before. I saw it on Zero Hedge. You remember when Hillary had all of her health problems during the campaign? And remember when she was trying to go up those stairs and two aides grabbed her and pulled her up? Well, Zero Hedge was hilarious about it. He said, headline, Hillary Clinton helps two men up the stairs. they turned it upside down. She's pushing them upstairs. And that's exactly the world we live in.
Perfect, yeah.
It's perfect. That's a perfect, because, you know, I don't want to mention names here, but watching cable, and I know a lot of I have come across some of the guests that the cable has, and I just want to just take them aside and just say, you're a smart guy. Why do you say stupid things? Yeah. And that's where we are right now. You know, if I just said the moon is at, you know, it's a full moon, and say, oh, I don't think so, Peter. It looks like 3/4 to me. Okay, no, it's full. Okay, it's a circle. No, I don't think that's a circle. I mean, I could go endlessly. Okay, where it's because you can't drop your mask, you can't let your gear off. There's a lack of authenticity and honesty, primarily on one side. I would say they would say I am dishonest. That's the dilemma we're in.
Yeah, I mean, I find it incredible that, okay, everyone is villainizing Trump, but I haven't seen Trump do 1/100th of the crimes that I saw Hillary and Obama and Bill Clinton do, and George Bush, of course, from WMD to Syria to Libya, and you know, we saw he died.
All of the sanctioning of Russia. Yeah. Trump has done more sanctioning of Russia than all of them combined.
But when you tell someone, you know, do you know that Hillary Clinton, you know, turned Libya into a slave state? Literally, they have slave trades now. It's like they don't. It's almost like you're destroying their religion. Would you say that neoliberalism, postmodernism, this thing has become a religion for this group of people?
See, the problem is that these two narratives that we've been talking about here, they both are messianic in a way, and that is the extra seasoning, as it were, into this the left's ideology, because it is because by default it is something progress and moving forward and solving all of the problems. See, we on the conservative side say, well, no, I mean we have it within us to do good and right because we are righteous people. But no, we can't. We don't solve all problems at all times. Okay, because I think that Stalin tried to do that, and Mao and Pol Pot and Hitler. They all tried. They had this complete picture, complete solution to mankind's predicament, and the left has bought into that. I mean, it's really, if you look at it, there's a continuum here. We saw how the right became radicalized, and an element of that right used a racial definition, ethnic nationalism, nationalist socialism to the extreme. Okay, and you saw socialist ideas under Pol Pot and Stalin to the extreme, and now the liberals are going to their extreme moment because they are the intolerant ones. How many acts of violence do people on the right commit in the U.S.? But Antifa, I mean, you could watch hours and hours and hours of their destruction. Representative Scalise, I mean, thank God he pulled through. Yeah. I mean, it's really God's miracle that he pulled through. Yeah. All right.
You have guys like Don Lemon. They say that Antifa has to be violent. It's in their name, so it's okay. They justify their violence because they have fascism in their name. Because they have legitimized that the ends justify the means. Okay, but anyone has that as an ideology runs into very serious problems. You know, just like with let's say with Donald Trump and the 25th Amendment, it says unfit to be president. But that is incapacitation. I mean, is Donald Trump unfit? Well, he's uncouth, but that's not against the law. He's rude, but that's not against the law.
Is he wobbly with the facts? Yes. Is that against the law? Show me the statute. See, this whole 25th Amendment thing, I mean, this is so typical, and it drives me nuts, is that people talk about things, but they don't know what they're talking about. Yeah. Have you read the 25th Amendment? I mean, before you have a segment on TV, why don't you just Google it and just read it? But none of them ever do it. None of them. No. And words do matter. Words matter a lot. I read just a few days ago the 25th Amendment, and I'd say it don't apply. It doesn't apply. I mean, if Donald Trump, God forbid, or anyone else is shot, if he goes into a coma, yeah, thank goodness we have the 25th Amendment. Now we know how to move forward, okay? But, barring something like that, he's fit as a fiddle. But is he uncouth? Yeah, but it's not against the law. See, liberals won't see that, okay? And liberals will find anything that remotely moves their agenda forward, okay? I don't see that from the right at all. The left is on some kind of steroids right now with their messianic vision of a neoliberal order for the world. I mean, why don't you worry about the U.S., okay? And the right is in disarray because Donald Trump has not been ingested completely, okay? And he probably never will be, okay? Because the right is very, very fragmented in many different ways.
So to close out the segment, we have the midterms coming up in literally less than a couple of months, right around the corner. What's the outcome, you think, Peter, in the midterms that will further divide America? Because there's some people that say, okay, if the Democrats take the House, then maybe they'll be pacified and they won't be as jittery and as triggered. But then you also say if the Democrats take the House, then they're going to move on this 25th Amendment and impeachment. It's just going to get worse. How do you see the possible outcomes for the midterms in relation to this divide?
One of the problems we all face are the clowns that were heading the polls for us, okay? It's difficult to trust the polls. I'm really been burned by that because even you and I talked right before the election in 2016, and we're pretty glum. Well, the polls say. Yeah. But now what do you do? I don't know. The biggest challenge will be, will the Democrats act upon their call for impeachment? Because I don't think they actually have thought, because they never think that far ahead. But if they're whipping up their base for impeachment, it's going to be incumbent upon them to do something. The next thing that will happen, no matter what, take impeachment out of the equation, you're going to get 2 years of deadlock that we have never seen before. Okay, that's an opening for our favorites, the deep state, because everyone's going to be looking over there and they're going to be looking over here. Okay, they don't have a problem with that because they'll survive it. But having 2 years of complete deadlock it's only going to embitter and embolden the two sides of the narrative. It's going to do what they're doing is they're destroying everything. They're destroying the power they want back. They don't think ahead. They don't understand the law of unintended consequences, and we're watching it in real time. It's extraordinary. No. So I look at the races, and it's really hard to say. I mean, only 3 times in the history of the Republic have a first-term president done well in his midterms. Only 3 times. And I'm willing to say, without a doubt, this is the most important midterm election in American history. And you know what? No matter what happens, the outcome doesn't look good. And that's why we're doing this video, because I don't see a remedy for this cultural civil war that's becoming political.
Yeah, the law of unintended consequences has been exported outside the U.S. a number of times. But I mean, I've never seen it inside.
For me, it's really interesting is that the current playbook for forced regime change was really developed with the illegal destruction of Yugoslavia, and it's been played out all through various parts of the world. Now that playbook is being rewritten in Washington, D.C. They're doing it to themselves.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just, you know, we'll watch it together when Brennan is brought in front of Congress and grilled. But that might never happen because of the midterms. Remember, folks, if the Democrats come to power, they get all the chairmanships. All the stuff you've been learning about the malfeasance over the DOJ and FBI will disappear. Okay?
Maxine Waters ahead of a committee.
Yep.
That's what we're looking at. Maxine Waters to head the Intelligence Committee.
Guy says Skeletor will be back as head of the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
Okay, Nancy Pelosi. Okay, I tell people, you know, I think it's good to vote, but you know, if you don't vote, then you're going to have to live with the consequences.
Yeah, we're all gonna have to live with the consequences. That's for sure. This is an incredible discussion. Great discussion.
No.
Yeah.
One thing I want to say is that I'll get stones thrown at me for this, but you know, I was thinking yesterday is that, you know, love him or hate him, Donald Trump, the staying power of that man, it's extraordinary. How many politicians would have caved a long time ago? A long time ago. Yeah. And if you look at the probability of a sitting president being reelected, it's really, really high. You really have to screw things up not to get reelected. And, you know, Donald Trump could say, hey, you know, just go with the flow. You know, maybe I can get Paul Ryan back on my side. But he doesn't. This is whole academic departments we built on Trumpology. What made the man think?
Yeah. Okay. And if he wins re-election in 2020, my
God.
I'll
have a whole university.
God. I can't even imagine. And I think he will. And if he can last it out, I think he will win in 2020. But one step at a time. Let's see the midterms first. Definitely. Peter Lavelle, host of RT's Crosstalk. Thank you very much for a fascinating discussion. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below and click on that notifications bell to get notifications every time we push out a new video. Please visit the Durad shop. I'll put a link up top on the right. Buy a t-shirt, help support the Durad, and down below in the description, donate to our PayPal page. Your donations help keep us broadcasting stories like this to you. Peter Lavelle, host of RT's Crosstalk. Thank you. Until next time, take care.